Hi, my name is Mark. So, we're doing another episode of Guitarist's Week, I guess. I'm still not sure if I should keep doing these videos, because even though I enjoy making them, after the first episode last week, which had some mixed results, I guess I'll be recording another one or a few more, and then we'll take notes from that. But basically, if you haven't watched the other episode, imagine this series as sort of like a news recap of the guitar/music industry news from the past week. But instead of me going from every single thing that happened last week, I'm just going to talk about things that I thought were particularly interesting or funny or something like it that I would like to share with you guys. And also get your guys' opinion on it. I guess just like last week, I'll leave guitar and gear for last. There were a bunch of videos released last week that I thought, one, were pretty funny, like Henning Polly's or HP42's video on how to not interview people. I love Henning and Henning's channel, and I think he has a very particular sense of humor, but I thought that in a comedic way this video was spot on. And it's awesome to see some of those very familiar faces in the guitar community. I do not always add videos to my favorites in the YouTube playlist, but this one was definitely one of them, and I highly suggest you not only go check that video out, but also subscribe to Henning's channel if for some reason you're watching this video and you're not subscribed to Henning. Another really funny video was a video on the Gear Gods channel, where basically Trey Xavier does this sketch, which is pretty close to reality really, which is just titled When You Try to Learn a Jason Richardson Solo. Which, unless you don't really know Jason Richardson, and in that case, if you don't, you're probably living under a rock. But if you do know Jason, I think that title is pretty self-explanatory. But anyways, I really think you should watch that video. Again, it's another one that went to the favorites. And also released last week was a video on the Reverb.com YouTube channel. Even though Reverb has sort of gotten into some slight controversies about that deal of the Pussy Melter channel and the Cockblocker pedal and Glenn Fraker and all of that, which in my opinion is just dumb on Reverb's part. But anyways, they've released a video, which even though it's supposed to be more like an instructional video, sort of a reaction video I guess, it was still sort of funny because they got Mark Holcomb, guitarist for Periphery, and Yvette Young, guitarist for Covet. Even though they sort of play in very different genres, if you're familiar with both of their playing, and again, if you're not, go check out their bands, Periphery and Covet. Again, I'd really like to know under which rock are you guys living under. But as I was mentioning, even though they play in very different style of bands, because Mark has an affinity for those clean parts and stretchy riffs, using some higher chord extensions and stuff like that, and Yvette does her prog tapping sort of math rock-ish thing. When I occasionally saw them banter on Instagram and stuff like that, I started thinking to myself, maybe it would be interesting if they formed a band or did some music together. And after they closely connected after working with Simmer Duncan and Periphery taking Covet as a supporting act on their tour, they started to bond a little bit more, and Reverb's video was pretty interesting because they taught each other their riffs. They made Mark play a Covet riff, and they made Yvette play a Periphery riff, and again, the video was not necessarily intended to be funny, but it had some interesting edits, and if you have or haven't watched the video, again, go watch the video. Mark's face when he tries to learn some of those odd time signatures with tapping and stuff like that, pretty much the face that we all make. She's like, oh, you just need to tap on the 7th fret or something like it, and he's like, yeah, definitely, tap on the 7th fret, exactly. I can definitely do that, yes.
How am I supposed to even learn this?
It was instructional in a way, funny in another, and in a way they looked very cute together. It was kind of heartwarming to watch. Again, I don't know, and I don't really want to invade their privacy or something like it, even though Mark is in a happy relationship, I think, and I think Yvette has or had something with Sun Holo. Yvette, if you aren't, you can DM me. Just kidding. Or am I? But their chemistry and their relationship in the video was really cute, and I only think it adds to the vibe of the video.
Yeah.
Oh, damn!
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Wow, you want to play for me tonight?
Yeah.
So, it's just a lot of pull-ups and tapping.
Damn it. Are you guys ready for this video to be 2.5 hours long?
Another thing that I guess can be considered heartwarming is that the Mega Cruise Instagram page, which, if you don't know, Megadeth did this cruise over the Pacific, or are doing. They started on the 13th and are ending in the 18th, I think. And they shared this really cool photo of Kirk Hammet jamming with this, like, Hawaiian shirt on. And which guitar was he playing? Of course, he has his signature ESPs and stuff like that, but he took the green Les Paul, which, if you don't know, is a 59 Les Paul, very special for being the guitar of Peter Green, Gary Moore, now Kirk Hammet, played by some other very special players, and it's also known tonally because the middle position is out of phase, and it gives it this sort of quacky sound. I'm not sure if you watching are in any way aware of vintage guitar prices, but 59 Les Pauls are some pretty expensive guitars. I think original ones in reasonable condition are selling for at least like, I don't know, 100 grand or something like it, and if they're owned by a famous or influential player, the price bumps up a lot, so I think you can probably guess that a very famous 59 Les Paul with a very particular sound, owned by two very famous guitar players, and now his third owner, being arguably the most famous owner of that guitar till now. That guitar is probably worth millions of dollars, which I'm not sure if he will ever sell. And there's Kirk just playing it on a cruise like nobody cares, and playing it on Metallica tours and whatever. And I may be a little bit too partial to that guitar, because if money wasn't in any way a problem, that would be my dream guitar. Well, not necessarily dream guitar, but that would be the guitar I chose, even if I could only choose one. But yeah, as I was saying, because I'm probably partial to that guitar, in a way I'm really happy that that guitar is being played, and it didn't just stick it in a box or in a storage place. But because that guitar was so influential, part of me feels this dread of something happening to it. But yeah, I don't know, again, it's probably because I'm partial to that guitar, because I think if it was any other vintage guitar, I wouldn't have a problem with him playing it. But in this case, even though I don't really have a problem with him playing it on stage, knowing that something can happen to it because it's on tour sort of gives me this interesting anxiety. But I don't know, you guys tell me what you think about this sort of stuff. And another YouTube thing that I thought was interesting was I was watching Steve from Boston's live stream, and he mentioned that there was not going to be a GuitCon this year. For those who don't know, GuitCon was an event that was sort of created by Henning of HP42. Again, go check out his channel if you haven't already. And a sort of partnership with Framus and Warwick. And again, details aren't really clear of what happened between the two of them, but from what I understand, for an event conceived by Henning, I think he didn't really have the input he wanted. So they parted ways, but Warwick still kept doing these events. Again, they gather a bunch of YouTubers and brands, they do some funny videos related to gear and stuff like that. You've probably watched some of your favorite YouTubers going. Again, they've done one 2 years ago, the first one. They've done the second edition last year, and I think everybody was already expecting that there was going to be a third edition of the event. But Steve confirmed that there wasn't going to be an event. As he mentioned in his live stream, it's not like there is one particular reason for them doing it, but rumors have been that they don't really want to do it each year so that it doesn't ruin the experience of the event. What's the difference between this year's and last year's or the year before or something like it? But another theory that has been rolling around, and Steve also mentioned, which is because, as you probably know, about that Gibson Play Authentic video, Gibson has sort of been after other brands who take inspiration on their designs, and Framus being one of those brands. When Gibson brought the lawsuit to Europe, even though the court didn't really rule in favor of Gibson, because I don't think European courts are that dumb. But again, that's not what this video is about. Because Framus had to go to court, I guess that probably took a little bit of expenses on their part, and doing non-profitable YouTube events is probably not what they're looking for right now. Even though, except an M show, most of these events are sort of private. We've got events for music YouTubers, not only from Framus and Warwick's GuitCon, but also TGU by Tillman and 42 Gear Street by Henning. It's not like we're out of content, but are you going to miss GuitCon this year? Tell me in the comments below. And since we're talking about YouTube events, this next thing is definitely an event on YouTube, because there's one video that we've been wanting for years, which is a Captain Meets with John Mayer. And even though it's probably not exactly a proper Captain Meets, yesterday, well, technically Sunday, because this video is going up in Wednesday, Captain Lee Anderson of Anderson's. Again, if you don't know him, you should probably search him under that rock you live in. Lee posted a photo of him backstage with Taylor, Danish Pete, and John Mayer, promising us that they did do an interview, so I'm probably expecting YouTube crashes when that video goes up. And I know many of you are probably waiting for here, but we have two other things to talk about, which is Steven or Stefan Taranto, or Taranto, I'm not really sure how to pronounce it. If you don't know him, he's this crazy guitar player. In fact, so crazy that even Tosin Abasi noticed him and endorsed him with Abasi guitars. He posted a video on Instagram, which is pretty much like all of his other videos, because in every video he plays awesomely. But I was scrolling through my Instagram and I saw that Dweezil Zappa left a comment on that video saying that he really enjoyed it. So when I turned the volume up and I checked out what he was playing, I mean, it's just messed up. I seriously suggest you go check it out, because if you're not blown away by it, I'm not really sure what's going to blow you away. And since we're talking about artists, Kingaglek. Again, probably very poorly pronounced, but I'm afraid that's the best I can do. If you don't know her, she plays the bass and she plays these funky bass lines, and she has some very interesting sort of pentatonic phrasing over some fancy chords which I like. And she released an original song called Joy Joy, and if you're in the mood to listen to this sort of funky soul-ish stuff and very bass focused but without being like, oh, I'm slapping the bass like Flea, look at me, I think you'll really enjoy it. I did, and I'd like to see what you guys think of it. And now finally getting to gear. This week, Music Man, we've talked about them last week when they released the Mariposa, and I mentioned that many times they do guitars that I really like, and then right after it they do guitars that I really dislike. And last week they've released a couple of the new Ball Family Reserve models. They've got a Majesty, a JP15, and a Stingray bass, and even though if the Majesty looks good or not is debatable, and if that color is good or not is debatable, I personally enjoy it, not as much as the Gold Sparkle Flake one they did I think 2 years ago. That guitar was sick, a little bit over the top but still sick, but the other models are really cool. The Stingray bass is not only super flamey and super bursty, but by it being fretless, I think they're going after that Jacko look, and I'm not really that much of a fan of the Jacko bass, but this one really speaks to me. Again, I know this isn't really a bass show, but still, as I always mention, I was a bass player first, so I can't really not react when a new bass comes out. And the JP15, although it looks cool, in the case of this particular photo, even though it's like a spalted maple top, I think, in a way it sort of looks like that crackle finish that Jackson and Kiesel are doing again. Again, it's not the best JP15 I've seen, but I definitely enjoy it. What do you guys think? And another brand who released new models, again preparing us for 2020, is the SE line by PRS. And I can definitely say, because I've talked about them again last week, about their sort of blasted swamp ash top ones that I didn't really like. They're on fire with the new SE models. They now have an SE version of the Mira guitar, which I'm definitely craving for a comparison video by Phil McKnight. They have an SE version of the Starla now with the stop tail. It almost has this retro vibe-ish, which I enjoy. And now they've got SE versions of the Hollow Body and the Hollow Body 2. The Hollow Body 2, at least the way I perceive it, is a fancier version with like flame tops and stuff like that. And I'm excited for it because I think PRS are quite underrated with their hollow body models. The only thing I'm wondering, and I think Phil McKnight said the same thing, which is the hollow body PRS guitars are pretty expensive. And because PRS doesn't really like to mess up the quality of their models, even when they go with the SE route, I'm wondering if the hollow body models on the SE line aren't going to be pretty expensive for an SE. They've also got one which I'm supposing it's a limited edition, but still it might be a regular model, with a burled ash top, and I don't really think I've ever seen a burled ash top. But it looks crazy. It's like a quilted maple top taken to an extreme. I think it's pretty awesome. They got another Custom 24, but this time with a poplar burl, which, even though the finish in this one looks great, and to be honest I didn't really go check if they have some other extra finishes, I probably should, because poplar burl tops are one of those types of woods that I think look better if they're not really messed up with, if they don't really mess them too much with colors and stuff like that. In this case I think it works fine, but I'm wondering if they have some natural ones. At least in their website it doesn't really show a natural burl one, it only shows this blue one, and probably not as flashy as all the other new models. Something that I thought was pretty cool is that they announced some SE locking tuners, and I'm wondering that if all the new models are now coming with SE locking tuners, or if only some of the guitars are going to get shipped with locking tuners. But the fact that they now got locking tuners gets me pretty happy about this, because for those who watched me unbox my Fender Strat, like, I don't know, probably like a year ago or something, or like a year and a half ago, you seen the first thing I did to that guitar, independently of if the tuners it came with were stable or not, I switched them out for locking tuners. It's just way more practical, way more fast for string changes, and the fact that the SE models now have locking tuners, pretty stellar to me. Sure, these guitars aren't exactly new, but Guitar Center posted a photo of this model right here, and again, like pretty much every other guitar I talk about on this show, I don't know about you, but I really don't like it. I remember Paul Reed Smith talking about them at NAMM and being like, oh yeah, look at these guitars, they're so pretty, they look so good. And I'm like, but do they, Paul, do they? I don't think it's the flame maple that's wrong, I think it's the color. I think it sort of makes sense for PRS to do it because they many times do these flashy colors, so doing them on their acoustic models isn't really something that surprises me. But I don't really think they look good. Maybe if it was on a different color or a stained brown or something, maybe it would look better. but in this case, I'm not really feeling it. Again, leave your thoughts in the comment section. And also last week we saw Black Star's new line of amplifiers, which is supposed to take over from their ID Core series, or no, True Valve State series, I think. It's basically one of their versions of a digital amp that tries to mimic valve or tube amplifiers, but has some interesting features, like you can actually switch between emulations of the different valve types and stuff like that. And I don't think I've ever mentioned this before, but I really like Black Star amplifiers. One of my first amplifiers was a Black Star, and I've played a bunch of them, and they are really reliable and they sound really awesome. So when I saw that they were releasing a new amplifier, even though yeah, sometimes the tone of an amplifier isn't really the tone you're looking for, I thought, yeah, it probably wouldn't really sound terrible. It's Black Star. But why I'm bringing their Silverline version up is they look sick. Maybe it's me because last NAMM I saw this also silver-ish, gray-ish 2-rock amplifier, which I thought looked sick, so maybe I have an affinity for gray amplifiers. But anyways, they seem to sound cool. They definitely look cool, and again, like everything I've mentioned till now, I'd really like to know what you guys think. Another interesting guitar I saw was that Ibanez released these pictures of some of the new J Customs, which is like an RG body with a flame top and either a mahogany body or a basswood body that looks really fancy with some tight grains and stuff like that. And even though I'm not particularly a fan of the Tree of Life inlay that goes across the guitar, I think those J Custom guitars definitely look fancy. Especially this one right here, which came on, I think, last year's NAMM or something like it. I think it looked really cool, but they released this one, which again, it might be because I don't really like the Tree of Life inlay, but they did this inlay on the guitar, sort of continuing the Tree of Life on the upper part of the body, and I think it doesn't really look good. At least compared to the original J Customs. Sure, they are definitely not stopping doing the original. I'm pretty sure they're not going to stop doing the old ones, but I don't really think, again, it's just my opinion, but I don't really think it was the best option to keep the inlay, which is already pretty fancy and pretty flashy, to the body. It's probably something that Steve Vai and Mrs. Smith would like, and maybe some of you guys would like it as well, but I personally don't really like this one. I have a lot of respect for Ibanez guitars, but this one, again, what do you guys think? And lastly but not leastly, Balaguer guitars. Even though they sort of lost some popularity when Fluff stopped being an artist for them, I still kept them under my radar because I thought that some of the guitars looked cool independently of Fluff playing them or not. And even though I don't mind the RD, I think the Hyperion looks a little bit weird, but whatever, that's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about this post they did on Instagram, and it's one of those posts like, oh, it's October, so the month is about Halloween, like Spooktober and stuff like that. And they've made a post with like, oh, here's some spooky guitars for you. Cringy in a way, yes, but if you take a look at some of the guitars they're making, I was like, damn boy, that's some cool guitars. Again, forgive me for not knowing model names, but this green one looks sick. I'm not really a fan of the dots on the fretboard. I think they never look good. And as I mentioned before, even though the Hyperion isn't really my favorite shape, I think the quill top in this one looks cool, especially with the binding and stuff like that. And it has fishman, so that's a plus. And this tally-ish body with this like burl maple sort of a thing looks cool. And the last one with that frosty finish looks cool. But then, what's this? What the hell is this supposed to be? I mean, if by spooky guitars you mean guitars that will give me nightmares, then this one will definitely give me nightmares. The post was so good, it had all these crazy guitars, then this monstrosity that should be burned with fire. Okay, maybe that was a little bit of an exaggeration, but it definitely looks weird. Again, tell me what you guys think. But yeah, I guess that's it. Again, thank you so very much for watching. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe, turn on all the notifications, follow me on social media, and if you can, share this video on social media, I'd highly appreciate it. Again, check out some of my other videos. I started this new series that I'm not really sure if we're going to keep doing it or not. You guys will have to decide, leave a like if you want me to keep doing these sorts of videos. But other than these sorts of videos, I also do guitar lessons with tips and tricks and stuff like that. I do composing and songwriting videos, which you can also check out. And there's already a little bit of a back catalog which you can check out. I highly suggest you do. But yeah, I guess that's it. Don't forget to leave your thoughts about what we talked about in this episode in the comment section below. And cheers!